The year is 2138. We actually have flying cars and somehow haven't all blown up due to dick measuring contests around the globe. Elon Musk's Catgirl experiment ended years ago and now we live alongside them. Life is strange, but life is good. You open up your invisible phone and browse the App Store, looking for a fun game. You download the first thing on the list, and why does this game look like it was made in 2012? Mobile games have improved every single year. At least some of them have. It really does feel like they're getting higher quality all the time, and that quality of life improves with every new iteration. The level of story writing, storytelling, game mechanics, and overall design just keeps getting better. But that only applies to some games apparently, because somehow Etheria Restart took everything that we felt good about in new mobile gaming and set us back 10 years. If you don't know what it is, Etheria Restart is a PvP-enabled anime gacha game that released in early June 2025, and its goal was to be a unique addition to the anime gaming space while also being the first major modern 3D PvP gacha game. For a lot of people, gacha with PvP is a red flag, but for some, it's a green light straight into a casino. Funny enough, if PvP felt like the focus of Etheria, I probably wouldn't have disliked it so much after investing 30 hours. PvP in gacha is ultimately about who spends the most money, and I love my tax write-off. But the more I write the script and reflect on my time playing, the more I realize how up this game is. From poor game design to using AI art to save a buck, Etheria Restart is full of problems that nobody is talking about because they're all sponsored.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
When I played, I decided to stay completely free to play because when I played the beta, I wasn't impressed with the gameplay loop, and even though you'd get your money back and more from the rebate, knowing my luck, I'd have better chances on a reroll than by spending $200. So when the game released, I rerolled for 8 hours.
はい、今出ます。
See, Etheria gave out quite a few polls, but it has this huge problem that's present in some other gacha games where the best characters from the standard character pool are rarer than the worst characters. It's the sort of scummy thing that some gacha developers do to make sure that you'll be willing to spend more money to compete in PvP or on some kind of leaderboard. And the reason it works is because most people don't know that the rarer ones are much better until it's too late for you to actually re-roll. Remember, it's not the majority of players who are watching YouTube and reading guides on games. Most people are going into Etheria without an idea of what characters they actually want to pull for. But to make matters worse, the rarer standard units, called LD units, have their own separate banner that guarantees them at 3 times the price per pull. This is another method that XD, Etheria's developers, used to trick you into thinking that the game is free-to-play friendly because the LD units can be earned without the 3 times price banner. But realistically, your odds of getting them are once per 4 SSRs, which have a 1% drop chance assuming you don't go to pity. If we assume you get super lucky and get one every 40 pulls, you'd need to do 160 pulls per LD unit, which, considering how many units there are in this game, your odds of hitting the ones that you want are significantly lower. It does have 100% rate up on the limited character banners, but those aren't always the units you need. And you might be thinking, oh well, Brax, this is a gacha game. Obviously you want to go for specific characters on your reroll, and you are 100% right. Not all SSRs and not all LD units are created equal, because if you don't have Lily, the game is basically fucking unplayable. Can you play it? Sure. Do you enjoy having your balls hooked up to a car battery? Probably. Welcome to Etheria Reroll. You're going to be here trying to get Lily for the next 4 days, because the difference between accounts that had cleared hide content by day 3 and the accounts that hadn't was that all of the ones who had cleared had Lily. Lily has a speed increase, a crit damage increase, an action advance, and a cooldown reset. This is like if Bronya gave you an action forward in HSR 1.0, instantly cleared MOC 12, handed you the keys to a Porsche, and sucked your... And Lily isn't the only unit that this game requires you to have to be able to keep up, because they designed the PvE to actually be hard, which honestly isn't that big of a deal if you're willing to learn, except for the fact that some bosses basically require you to build specific characters. And in order to do that, you have to log in 3 times a day for 14 business days to use your stamina and not over cap. And in fact, by then, your characters probably still wouldn't even be maxed because it takes so goddamn long to level them to max, and then ascend them to give them another star and level them to max again, and then ascend them again to give them another star, and... This game's grind is a disaster. This game has so much grinding to it that the club would be jealous. First off, you have shells, which are basically weapons with RNG sets. Then you have modules, which are gear with RNG stats and RNG sets. Then you have prowess, which is your character's skill levels that takes not only specific missions, but also incredibly rare resources that you have very limited amounts of. And the character's level and ascension, which XP can be farmed for, but at very slow rates. And once you max out the character's level, you have to ascend them to make them even stronger. And those resources are ridiculously limited as well. Problem is that it takes so many resources and so much time to level a character, their shell, their prowesses, and their modules that free-to-play players are better off going to college for 4 years and getting a job to swipe instead. And not only does it take a ridiculous amount of time and stamina to level characters, it also takes a ridiculous amount of time to level your account as well. Each 10 stamina you spend is 10 experience, so it's basically a level or 2 a day after you get somewhat into the game, and less than a level a day at higher level. If you use premium currency, you can refill stamina up to 10 times a day though, which will put you literally 3 to 4 days ahead every single day, which massively helps you get through the story locked content and get to PvP faster. We all thought this was going to be a PvP focused game with PvE in it, and somehow the devs made it a PvE game where you can only get to the PvP if you survive 4 hours of shitty Honkai Impact 3rd style missions. At the beginning of the game, you're required to do the story, which ultimately isn't that big of a deal, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say that that was one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had in a gacha game. It's not that the story is hard, it's that the story missions are a chore. It feels like you're in a tiny little box and you have to go from one side to the other and you can't stray at all. And whenever there's an enemy, there's a 50-50 chance you get forced into a combat session. If you're a story enjoyer, I'm sure it's fine, but the year is 2025. Why is the story being told like our phones are Nokia bricks? Also, in order to access PvP, you have to do the story up to a certain point. In fact, to access and move forward with any part of the game, you're required to do the story. The one saving grace is that there is a skip button for people who don't care, but because the story is level gated, there's a lot of times where you just can't play the game beyond doing daily auto farm missions unless you spend your premium currency on refills of stamina. On the contrary to that, when you level up, you get more stamina that you have to spend immediately or you'll overcap. So sometimes you're forced not to play the game, and other times you're forced to play the game. And all of this is just on the quest to get to a high enough level to be able to farm the endgame gear so that way you can play the PvP. How long does it take to get to endgame farming and actually compete in PvP as a free-to-play player who's not wasting their premium currency? Drum roll, please. 30 to 60 days.
わかってるって。
You have to play through this auto farm slop for 1 to 2 months just to be able to enjoy endgame PvP. And enjoy is being used loosely, because if you're free to play, you should honestly just give up. If you don't have the right units, you're going to struggle with PvE farming and PvP. This game's progression is so incredibly slow that it feels terrible to try and level up. It feels like your characters make no progress daily. The pacing is so poor that for most people, the only way you're going to enjoy this game is by spending. I mean, this is literally the gameplay for almost 2 months. You would genuinely have a better time watching paint dry and eating the paint chips off the wall afterwards. And honestly, I was gonna leave the video mostly at that, just being, you know, kind of pay to win and not very fun in the PvE. But then the devs decided to suicide their game. Here's the thing, they decided to make a pretty good overall PvP system, with different game modes like an offline defense mode and a real-time arena. They even have private matches and a system made for casting tournaments. It's honestly super impressive how much work they put into it and how well it functions. Duplicates of characters still do give bonus stats, and your units matter just as much as your gear, but that's about what you'd expect from a gacha game. And for sure, the best part of Etheria Restart is how good the PvP system is, despite its flaws. The weird part though is that they've been nerfing units that people spent weeks worth of resources on. The trash! Because get this, the boss that's meant to be farmed is being farmed too easily. No, I'm not joking. Within 2 weeks of this game being released, they felt like people were farming the game too easily, so they nerfed a character that people spent all of that time investing in. Like, I just don't get the thought process there. The whole point of the gacha game is for you to not play the game that much. Like, there's literally stamina in the game for that reason, to stop you from playing all the time. So I don't really understand why it would be a problem that people are clearing the content that they're supposed to be clearing using a strategy that's completely fair and within the rules of the game. Balancing characters to PvE is a huge mistake for a game with PvP in it. Naturally, players weren't too happy with the decision. After all, what sense does it make to make PvE farming harder in a gacha game? And to add insult to injury, XD didn't even offer to refund players their invested resources until players began to criticize them for it. As mentioned 30 times in this video already, it takes a ridiculous amount of resources to level a character in that game. It's like they don't even play their own game. I don't know what they're thinking. At this point, if recent events are anything to go off of, then Etheria Restart is more cooked than the chicken I had for dinner because I'm terrified of food poisoning. Speaking of cooked though, it gets even worse for Etheria because genuinely, what the fuck is this? Yeah, so basically to save a couple bucks and not hire real artists, XD used generative AI to create their character splash arts. Now sure, I can understand the argument that it's XD's game and they can do what they want with their own property, but what I'm wondering is, if this company has millions of dollars to spend on marketing and made back millions more dollars in the first week of the game, how is it that they couldn't afford to throw $10,000 at an actual artist to make their splash arts and not have huge glaring errors in them? That kind of laziness gives me the impression that XD doesn't actually care about making the game good at all, and that they're just in on the gacha rug pull meta developed over the past few years. Don't get me wrong, it looks better than Epic 7 by far, but this game still feels like it's so far behind every other new gacha game. With its story missions, its archaically and needlessly confusing UI, and its extra gacha rarity mentality. The game is highly unit dependent, resources are incredibly scarce, the story gameplay isn't engaging, and it takes you forever to even start farming gear for PvP, in which case you're already behind everyone who's swiped if you're free to play. And I haven't even spoken about the monetary advantages yet. There are so many low spender packs to try and get you to spend, and if you do spend, the advantages you get over free to play players is absolutely disgusting. From just having more SSRs to actually leveling them and progressing them further faster. Etheria Restart is incredibly pay to win, as much as they don't want you to believe it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I gave up after 30 hours. Not because of the pay to win, not because the game was too hard or anything like that, but because it just wasn't fun. At least not for me. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who enjoy Etheria Restart, and it is 100% free to try it, so if you want to give it a go, go for it. But I can't in good faith recommend this game to anyone, because at the moment, the progression systems are poorly developed, the gameplay doesn't feel that engaging unless you're in PvP, and even when you're there, it's so pay to win favored that you probably would be better off just finding another game to play. I would rather play League. I have 12 hours played in 10 years of having an account. I fucking hate that game. There is one thing that this game does extremely well though, and that's unions. If you have a group of friends that you love to play with, unions provide a way for you guys to support each other better than your parents did. But I'm gonna be honest, that's about it. Let me know if you like this video or if you want me to go myself. I'll see you guys later.